IMF's call for the reintroduction of these taxes should be discussed in perspective. I want government to run a balanced budget where we will not be thinking of budget deficit, or you run a surplus budget. Currently, our public debt is so huge that it will not be advisable for government to continue borrowing at a very high rate. So what do we have to do? The basic thing to do now is to raise revenue domestically here. And tax revenue is a major component, more than 80% of the domestic revenue. So there's every reason for us to be thinking of raising enough domestic revenue. But I will not say that government should either reintroduce them or not reintroduce them just by saying sake. As an economist, I'm a researcher, and so you make recommendations based on your findings. And that's why I took you back to the 2017 budget. The reasons for the abolishment or the reviewer of those taxes were that they were low revenue yielding potential, and they were also serving as obstacles. They were imposing significant burden on the private sector. So in 2016, and the GDP growth rate at that time was 3.6. Now we are doing around 6 to 7%. So someone will say that, okay, now our GDP has increased, so we can introduce those taxes. But I think that we have to assess it. Take each of the taxes and assess it. If they can do it at the Ministry of Finance, that'll be fine. Bank of Ghana, that'll be fine. Or they can engage some staff on Legon campus, any other researcher to make those assessments. Each of the taxes, let's see, are they now, because they were yielding low revenue, so are they now going to yield high revenue if we introduce them? That is number one. Number two, we said that they were imposing significant burden on the private sector and the ordinary Ghanaian. Now, if we reintroduce them, are they going to be a burden on the private sector? Then there's no need to introduce them. So the two criteria, revenue yielding potential and then also significant burden. Now, if any of those taxes is going to yield enough revenue for government, then we have to reintroduce it. And number two, if that revenue is not going to impose any significant, the word here is significant burden on the private sector and on every Ghanaian, then we have to reintroduce those taxes again. Other than that, there's no justification for the reintroduction of those taxes. But I understand where the IMF is coming from. And I share the same concern as a Ghanaian that we need to raise revenue. But introducing new taxes is not the only way of raising tax revenue.